Joe, you just flew in last night from another trip to Europe. I think you were in London yesterday. And as long as I've known you, you've been kind of the most transatlantic blues artist and roots music artist that I've ever had a chance to get to know. And you lived in Europe, of course. You lived in France for a while. What is it about Europe and the European audiences that makes it work for you?
If you ask someone what I did in the United States, um, they say, "Well, we got this blues guy, Joe Louis Walker." They say, "No, no, he's sort of he's not really he's not your BB King, Muddy Waters. He's sort of the label doesn't fit so much. Whereas over there, I don't need a label, and I guess that's the crux of it is that over there is it's all music. It's not so much labels.
You're a student of the music and all kinds of music, and of course the history of great artists living in Europe and working in Europe has been a long one. And I'm sure that when you started going over, you probably ran into some of those great blues legends who were living over there. Would that be the case?
Yeah, I've ran into a lot of guys. I think I'm pretty sure when I went to Finland, I think the first time Eddie Boyd was there, Screaming Jay Hawkins in France, Mickey Baker. I did some shows with Mickey Baker, the great guitar player. A lot of stuff with jazz guys, gosh, Archie Shepp and guys like that, and of course guys that would come over because it's funny overseas. Like I was just saying, it's not so much labels. If I did festivals from day one when I would go over there as part of Mississippi Delta Blues Band. We'd be the blues on the festival, but on the same festival might be McCoy Tyner. I mean, we had the same agent for a long time, or any number of different Yusu Indoor. I've done festivals with him. Mana Dibango, just on and on. Gypsy Kings, just on and on and on and on. So it's for me. It's I'm in heaven because I get to hear all different kinds of music, which I like.
I know of your appreciation for all those different kinds of music, and it's great that you have a place to be able to do that more so, I suppose, than in the States. Have you had a chance to do much improvising with some of those jazz people? Is that part of what you do as well?
Yeah, I've been fortunate. I've had a couple of good close friends. Number one, being Branford Marcellus. We wrote some stuff together, and I played on his record. He played on my record. Charlie Hayden, we did a whole record together, me, him, and James Cotton, and David Maxwell, which God bless Charlie, and we won the Grammy on that one. And being part of the Thelonious Monk Institute, I really got to really be the Thelonious Monk Institute of Jazz and Blues now. We got to do quite a few things all down south, and myself, Bobby Watson, did several things with Herbie Hancock. At one point, I turned around and the band behind me was Herbie Hancock, George Duke, Wayne Shorter, Terry Lynn Carrington, John Patitucci, and a whole bunch of other people. And to me, that's what music's about. It's about those collaborations because it brings out something different in you. And just to be able to be around musicians of that stature, and that was just the backup band. The front band was BB, Robert Cray, Kev Moe, and myself. So I mean, but we're all part of the Institute, and Bono and all these people, The Edge, and blah 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 blah.
Yeah. Yeah. So being part of that institute, does that entail doing workshops and doing educational things?
Yes, we did. Me and T.S. Monk, Thelonious Monk's son, Bobby Watson, John Patitucci, and several of us, we did a lot of different shows. We went down south and we did Leland, Mississippi. We did Tunica, Mississippi. We did down Stovall's Plantation. We did Ground Zero, Clarksdale, Mississippi. We did Memphis, Tennessee. And then we did another whole bunch of shows. We did Chicago, or Herbie's home. We did Herbie's hometown in Obama, Hyde Park. We did all that. And we did quite a bit of stuff. And it's just your heart just opens up when you see 600 kids. Just, and I got a chance to sing Sweet Home Chicago, right? In Chicago with Herbie playing the piano, Bobby Watson on the sax. And man, it was just, you couldn't have, when I said, that same old place, Sweet Home Chicago, 600 kids jumped up screaming. It was hilarious, It was worth it.
Joe, I know you grew up in the Bay Area, and music has been around you since I don't know how long, but I know Jimmy McCracklin was part of your family.
Yeah, McCracklin.
And is T-Bone Walker related to you directly?
Well, I when I play Los Angeles, his daughter comes out, Viola, and we have a good time. And I see her all the time, and I don't know. I don't know. My dad was from Cleveland, Mississippi. So Mississippi and Texas sort of do different things, but I don't think so. I've never. But I got to know the family, his daughter and everybody, and pretty good. I've known her for quite a while now, and we feel like family.
Could you tell us a bit about that environment that you grew up in and the music around you when you were growing up?
Well, I'm probably one of the most fortunate people in music that I know because. My father coming from Mississippi, my mother from Arkansas, they brought their music with them. And me being the youngest of the litter, I had 5 brothers and sisters, and I got all their music, from my oldest brothers and sisters. That's when the records in the 50s, you didn't know who was who. So my sister had Elvis Presley records, Jerry Lee Lewis records, Fats Domino, all the rock. My daddy had Howlin' Wolf and all that stuff. My mama had B.B. King, B.B. King, B.B. King, B.B. King, on and on and on. So me being the youngest, I got the trickle down of all of it. And then when my parents split up for a while, we moved to Western Addition, which is they call the Fillmore now. And I went to junior high school a block from the Fillmore Auditorium. We used to have our Battle of the Bands there. But the best thing about it was when I moved there, I'd already checked out every instrument I could. When I was, we lived in a suburb called Ingleside, Ocean View, really. And then when my parents broke up, we moved to the Fillmore district. But when I was a kid, I checked out every instrument at the school. I started with the violin, the accordion, everything. I'd have dragged the piano home if I could have pushed it. But I couldn't make any noise out of it, and I wanted to play guitar. So when we moved to the Fillmore district, all my 4 cousins had a band already, and I didn't know it. And the minute I walked in there, it was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Because they could play. I mean, they didn't know what keys and stuff, but they could play like, scream Big J McNeely, Something on Your Mind. I mean, they were doing little gigs, little sock hops. And it was like, oh, man, I got to do this. But my cousins wouldn't let me touch the equipment. I had to carry it for a year. Carry the equipment for a year first. They wouldn't let me touch it. And after I carried it for a year, and my mom sent me to a lady to teach me some rudiments of guitar, then I could start teaching my cousins different chords and notes because they didn't know how to read. They could just natural musicians. Instead of saying, let's play in the key of A, they put their fingers and say, let's play here, right. Play there. And they were good enough to where they can manipulate. They listen to a record, they could pick it up. We played all kinds of stuff. We did commercials for Sly Stone's in his radio program, K-Soul. We did stuff for Tom Donahue. We did stuff for the Elks. We did stuff for the Masons. We were literally the mascot for a black motorcycle gang called the Rattlers. This was like 63, 64, 65, about 64, 65. And that's when we really sort of became a good band of musicians. My oldest cousin, Ted Weisinger, left because he got in a band with a guy named Roger. Actually, Freddie Stewart, Sly Stone's brother. They were all in the band together. And then my cousin, Ted, went with a guy named Roger Collins who had a big hit record called She's Looking Good. She's looking good. That mama get your mojo. They had a big hit record called She's Looking Good. Howlin' Wolf even covered the song. Right. One of the few rock and roll or soul songs Howlin' Wolf ever covered. I don't know why. But so my cousin got picked away to do that, and that made space for me. And so I got to do that. But then when the hippies started coming to our neighborhood, I started playing with everybody. Hippies, you name it, I would play with them. I put an ad in the paper, in the Berkeley Barb, in the musician. We called it Hero for Hire. I was a hero for hire from the day I was oh, Jesus Christ, 16 when I left home. So I played with played with Blue Cheer, all the Cats in the Dead, all the Cats of Quicksilver, Jerry Miller, Moby Gray, blah 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 blah. But this was before people were famous. None of those guys thought nobody had the slightest idea that they were going to make as much money and be as influential as they were. And that goes from the Grateful Dead on to all of them. Nobody knew.
What a great scene to be part of, and especially at that particular age when there was that kind of melting pot of music going on and culture, because there was so much more than music. It was a lifestyle. It was there was poetry. There was clothing. Fashion going on, and you were right in the middle of that, and of course the Fillmore was epicenter for that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was one of them. They also had the Family Dog, Avalon Ballroom, and there was a lot of one-offs. Before the Avalon and Fillmore, they used to have shows at the Longshoremen's Ballroom, Longshoremen's Hall, which was where all the longshoremen worked at, but they'd rent it out on the weekends. So I'll never forget, I seen Lou Walter at the Longshoremen's Hall when I was, I think, 14. And the Hells Angels, the motorcycle club, had rented the hall, and they had the blues all the time. And they had Lil Walter, Bo Diddley, the Grateful Dead, and I was the blues nuts. I went, when I went in, it was dark and everything. And then when they turned the lights on, I looked around, and it's just a whole bunch of Hells Angels and me. And I was like, whoa, But I've never had any problem. I mean, I used to ride a motorcycle. I don't. There was only guys I'd let work on my motorcycle was Hells Angels because I got to know them a bit.
Yeah. Do you remember some of the most interesting bills that you would have seen? Combinations of different people, and that it seemed like that was pretty significant for that time period, and it was a time period that we lost. When you could put a great jazz artist on with a blues artist or a psychedelic artist, and have somebody reading poetry in between. Right?
Well, that was all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I could just say who I saw. But I just remembering exact bills is sort of hard.
Yeah.
But I mean, I remember seeing, Rashawn Roland Kirk and, the Dead liked Rashawn Roland Kirk. So I know he was the Dead and I think maybe the Wolf and stuff like Muddy and the Quicksilver Messenger Service and Bola Sete, or Charles Lloyd and Manita de Plata and a Yardbird with Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck. And nobody knew who Jimmy Page was, stuff like that. The Moby Grape with maybe Tower of Power and James Cotton, who had Matt Murphy on one side of the stage and Luther Tucker on the other side of the stage. I mean, a serious band. That's when Cotton would turn flips on stage. It was something to behold. Yeah.
Well, you became very good friends with Michael Bloomfield, and as a teenager, you actually shared a place with Michael Bloomfield, who at that time was already pretty much a guitar hero in certain roles.
He's a guitar hero way before he met me. I met him.
Yeah. And he was, of course, he was one of the people that moved to San Francisco from
Mill Valley.
Yeah. How did you end up getting to know him and being such good friends with him?
Well, like I said, I was probably one of the luckiest guys. So just in the right place at the right time. But the gist of it is that I ended up playing with a piano player from Chicago named Johnny Kramer, Caramer, and a great blues player. I mean, serious. And we just sort of really gravitated towards each other. I forgot what jam session we met or wherever. I think we met each other through Ira Kamen, who had started a group called Mother Earth. And Johnny got a place and was living with Johnny. And it just so happens that I went and seen the Butterfield Blues Band. And that's when I lived on Waller and Ashbury, one block from Hayden Ashbury. And I was going to the bookstore after I'd seen the Butterfield Band. It's like, wow. I've seen Michael. It's like, damn, there's somebody that is very, very, very intense. And I was going to the bookstore, and some guy runs up to me and says, "Hey, brother, you know where a bookstore is?" And it was Bloomfield. Just like that. And so I told him, "Man, I seen you last night." And blah, blah. He said, "Well, nice meeting you, man." I told him about my playing. They will stick with it, blah, blah, blah. And so then you come to find out that Kramer was Barry Goldberg's first cousin. And so we fast forwarded. I moved in the house with Kramer in Mill Valley, And he through Barry, he had known Michael real good. So Michael was quitting Butterfield and was starting this group called the Electric Flag. And so he moved all the musicians out to his house. In the course of that, it was so much mayhem that he moved out of his own house and left the band there with his wife Susan and everybody. And I think him and Susan were breaking up at the time. And Michael moved in with me and Johnny Kramer. And then I moved to Vancouver. This was 1968, 69, when the Vietnam War was going on. I moved to Vancouver, and by the time I came back, Michael had bought the famous house on Carmelita Street, and I moved in that house where a bunch of us lived.
You probably played a lot with him at that house.
Yeah, he showed me quite a bit of stuff, especially about slide guitar and lap steel and piano.
Yeah. So with all that stuff going on in San Francisco and all those people that you knew, you kind of went a different way. You went into the gospel. You kind of went into the gospel music business for a while, didn't you?
Well, that's sort of an oxymoron, gospel music business. I don't think there's no thing, but that's a good sentiment. What happened was around 75, things were, the excess had just gotten excessive. I mean, everybody was just, it was getting bad, and I think, let me see. I think Jimi Hendrix had died by then. Janis Joplin. Because I knew all these people. I knew Jimmy. I knew Janis. They'd come to the gig. I knew, and things were getting so bad that I figured out if I didn't change, something bad was going to happen to me. So I just lost the taste for being on the treadmill. Everybody trying to make it. Everybody doing anything, everybody taking everything, everybody, it just got to be where something that was altruistic or something that was really started good became something, like somebody said, that whole era started with Woodstock and ended with Altamont, and I think that's the best way to put it. I was going to go to Altamont. My wife went to Woodstock, So, I mean, it's sort of my life sort of parallel with that. And I just got just something called me in a different direction. And I'm glad I did, because if I didn't, I'd have probably been in a car with Bloomfield when they found him dead. Wow. Or with numerous friends of ours who ended up dead.
Looking back at the 20-plus albums that you've recorded, the 4 DVDs that you've done, could you pick a couple of those highlights, those landmark recordings that you're the most proud of over those years?
Well, I think one that sort of just sticks out for me is the great guitars, because I got to make a record with a lot of my heroes. I got to make a record with people that I really, that to me, are some of the main pillars of the cornerstone of the music that we play. They made it up. They made the mistakes. They made the stuff work. Ike Turner, Scotty Moore. And out of all that, I became good friends with all those guys. I mean, I toured with them. I brought them on tour. I played on their records. They played on mine afterwards. Matt Guitar Murphy, Otis Rush, Robert Jr. Lockwood. And I literally played on all their records. At the end, I played on Robert's record. I played on some of Ike's stuff. I played on Scotty's record, All the King's Men. Me and MT did. And so it was just, for me, it was one of those things where the biggest thrill of my life was, one of the biggest thrills was to know that they trusted me with their artistry. Nobody came to me and said, what are you trying to make a hit record? You want to do this? You want to do that? You want to use me? Everybody trusted me, because they knew I'm a student of this, and I don't think they get enough credit. I really don't. I think the guys that are out there today, that have worked, you can't belittle anybody or begrudge anybody's success, But if you're going to be a successful ball player, and the play you run is going to be the one that gets you the championship, well, somebody wrote that play. Somebody made that play. Somebody tested that play out, and they said, "I know that play will work." They may have failed at it about 100 times, but that 101 time, they did it, and everybody's seen it. Well, that's people like Ike Turner, Scotty Moore. Without them, it's just a hole in music. And Otis Rush. I mean, these guys, they didn't sit at home listening to play like somebody else to make the crowd like them. They literally invented what they played. Most of them invented what they played. And then Scotty and people like that, they invented rockabilly. They didn't want to play country and western, and they couldn't play the blues. I mean, Gatemouth invented his own thing. I mean, Steve Cropper, what can you say?
Yeah.
So I mean, just to be able to be around people like that was an honor, and to be able to do that record, and for the record to have some success, and be able to take those guys on tour. I took quite a few of them. We did a lot of things. Was just an honor. That one, and of course, and I'm not blowing smoke about this. Between the Rock and the Blues on Stony Plain was a sort of a full circle for me. Because I had a rough patch in my career, as most real blues men do. Our jazz men are artists. In my estimation, you cannot be an artist and not have some adversity. If you, like Muddy Waters say, if you just wake up and you get everything you want every day, what the hell you got to sing about? So we all have tribulations, but I had a heck of a tribulation. And between the Rock and the Blues, I had to come back from France and had to work my way back, tour, play places that I hadn't played in years, and really start off like a baby act, come back all over again. And between the Rock and the Blues was a culmination of that, and that winning that BMA Awards, which used to be the W.C. Handy Awards, for Album of the Year, after every American record company passed on me, but they kissed me, but they didn't do anything else with me. And these are the same labels that were blowing smoke up my skirt when I was on Universal and Polygram and everything. And all of a sudden, my music, there was nothing different about it. It's just it was advancing onwards, but because of my personal tribulations, I guess that caused the problem. But then again, I do believe that every artist that I know worth their salt, from Thelonious Monk to Keith Richards, has had personal tribulations, well documented. But this is the thing you have to go through, and I think they say God don't give us more than we can handle. I think it was something that I needed to go through to be able to have it taken away from me, because I couldn't play for 2 years. I had to stay at home and raise and help my kids stay at home and different things, and so nobody knew. They thought it was something else, and to a degree, something other elements were involved. But that was basically the gist of it: going through a horrific marriage and raising 3 kids and a mother that was dying. So not to sound too melodramatic, you can't go to a record company and say, well, I can't go on tour. I can make a record, but I can't go on tour, or this, that, and the other. Well, we heard you didn't show up. Well, I would have showed up, but my oldest daughter was sick. Well, they don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear it. And so it was just a real vindication, and I'll forever be indebted and honored to Stony Plain and yourself and everybody at Stony Plain, for working with me on that and give me the chance to show, that it ain't over till it's over.
Speaking of Canadian connections, I was surprised to hear, I didn't realize you actually lived in Vancouver in the late 60s.
Yes.
You have a few other Canadian connections. You worked with the Sidemen. You recorded one of their songs.
One of my favorite writers, Paul Reddick.
Paul Reddick, yeah, me too. Kenny Blues Boss Wayne, another
Yes.
Canadian. Yeah. Tell us about your work with him.
Well, Kenny, we're basically from the same neighborhood in San Francisco. So Kenny's a few years older than I am. He's just one of the most talented keyboard players, bar none. We sort of lost touch when we were teenagers and this type of thing. He went playing with Sylvester, the disco queen.
I remember that album.
And I was off with Bloomfield and all those guys and blah blah blah. But he was always a great piano player and organ player. He come up out of church like I did. And he moved to Canada after. I was in Vancouver in '69, and I was in Toronto in 1970. And I lost track with Kenny, and I was just glad enough that later on, when I was on Polygram, I reconnected with him, and he got a chance to record together on the Silver Tone Blues record, and took him to Europe with me, and he just, everywhere he played, people just love him, and he's such an affable person, just really a very, very sweet and warm human being to be a U.S. Marine drill sergeant. he's like the guy in Full Metal Jacket, and then he's this nice, wonderful person.
Jim Dickinson said that world boogie is coming, and I kind of thought about that every once in a while. I think, it's a universal sound that maybe hasn't hit us yet, that combines so many kinds of music that you're familiar with. Do you think that there's something like that on the way?
Yes, I know it is. I see it when I'm out there performing. They just can't think of it's hard to get the people in the positions of power in any industry to be ahead of the curve, because they always want to capitalize on what's popular at the moment. But it's quite obvious to me, living in France and different places, that it's a mixture of all things, because people in Africa like the blues, people in America like African music, people in India like rap, people in rap like Bollywood. So if you put them all together, and it works. But there's always something to introduce to someone that they haven't heard, if their mind is open. If their mind is open. And that's why psychedelic music came out, because people's mind were open. That's why anything new, Jimi Hendrix, whatever, the Rolling Stones, anything new, when someone's mind is open, then it can happen. Right now, I've been doing, in my own personal thing, a 3-guitar thing that I've been doing in Europe with a good friend of mine named Amar Sandi, great guitar player, originally from Algeria, living in France for many years. Played with Albert King, that's where I met him in the mid-'80s. And it's me and him and Morali Coryell, Larry Coryell's son, who's a triple threat, sings like O.V. Wright, can play like Freddie King, an original songwriter. He can't get arrested in the United States because they don't get it. Well, I told him, just join the club. Just join the club. You just got to keep on playing. You got to keep swinging if you want to get a hit. So just keep swinging. But, we've been doing the 3 guitars, and what we do is that we do, part of the show is Joe Louis Walker stuff. Then we'll do some Mars stuff, which is Arabic with African, some of the Wolof, and Morali, who speaks 6 languages. So if we're in France, we might do one song where Amar will sing it in African or Algerian. I'll sing it in English. Morali will sing it in French, and we'll keep the music. If we're in España, Amar can sing it in French. Morali can sing it in Spanish. I can sing it in English. If we could, in Russia, he can sing it in French or Spanish or African. I can sing it in English. Morali knows a little Russian. And he can sing. I'm not just saying just talk. Really sing very well. So this is what my vision is of it. And it's extremely, when I moved back to the United States, I played a couple of cuts that I had made in France with the African drummers and myself and French musicians, and it's a mishmash. Universal, they understood it. They still want to do it, and we maybe still want. When I brought it back to the United States, not one record company had to understand. I got to be honest, though, Blind Pig listened to it and says, wow, that's different. Play it some more. But I think the more they heard of it, the more they figured, it wouldn't fit into the cubicle that they have in the United States, So it's just and if you look today, you see there's a lot of marriages like that going on. The biggest one, I guess, being Dave Stewart and Joss Stone and Damian Marley and Mick Jagger, because they see it. They see it. They out there in the world. I know Mick and Damian Marley sees it. that you can marriage that. And that to me is what music's about. That's the best part of music. You know, I mean, if Robert Johnson was alive, he'd be doing some different stuff. You know, he wouldn't be playing Crossroads. He'd be doing something else. You know, if Muddy was alive, he'd be still doing the blues. But Muddy had a lot of different interests. You know, I mean, he had young guys come and would highlight him. You know, so I think, you know, everything sort of if the mind is open, you can get some unexpected things. You know.
Thank you very much, Joe. I really appreciate it.
For sure. Thank you.